recording, and then I'm going to start with the meeting. I do want to stress, by the way, that at any point, if you have questions about anything that's being addressed, don't hesitate to use the chat to ask questions, because one thing I still need to get better at is delivering content in such a manner that makes sense to people that may not necessarily have the amount of knowledge that I have. And I don't mean it in a bad way, but like I know what I want to address. I know how to go about things, but we're not all coming from the same starting point, so to speak. So again, if there's anything unclear, let me know. So again, the agenda for the meeting. All right, so what to expect. So there's a couple of things I want to go through, but a lot of it will be also looking back at what we did last year at U9, especially if you have done U9 before, or you did U9 last year. It's also a check for understanding, basically. Do you remember what we did, what your role was, how to go about things? So we'll talk about our WSA development objectives. Quick summary off, because everything that we do is impacted by our development philosophy. The impact of our development philosophy on our training and coaching methods, because obviously there's a why behind all that we do, and again, it's a check for understanding, so to speak. I'm going to talk about the role of the coach. I think that will probably take up the majority of the time. Understanding that the role of the coach, whether you're a volunteer professional, is great, and your impact on our members is hopefully a positive one, and we want to make sure that you know exactly what is expected. Quickly go through the program breakdown, but again, if you have done U10 before, and there's a very little I need to add to, because it doesn't differ too greatly from what we did at U9. And then we'll talk about the 7-a-side game format really quick as well. And I may have a guest presenter explain the build outline one more time as a refresher for all as we get into our season. So all by all, this is what we're going to talk about. So this is what I want to ask you to do first. I have 2 questions, and if you can, just use the chat, hoping that you're behind the computer, because that would make things a little easier, obviously. So the first question is, just give me 1 or 2 things. It doesn't have to be like, you don't have to give me a whole list of things, but what actually worked well for you last year? As in, you were assigned as a coach, you stepped up to help out. You now have potential whole year of coaching experience behind you. What worked well? What worked well for you in the setup that we have within our program? So if you can use your chat, I'll give you a minute or so. Again, being mindful of the time, but I'm curious to hear from your side what worked well. So I'll start my stopwatch now. We'll do that for about a minute. I'll read through it in a little bit. All right. So what worked well for you last year? I'll monitor the chat as we go. All right, so if you can, whatever you wish to share with us, let me know. Again, I'm just trying to find out, how effective we are, so to speak, in getting, our players the product that we want them to have. So far, I've only gotten 1 thing so far. So I'm with this many people on, I should get a lot more than that. So, all right, stopwatch is still going. We have about 20 seconds left. There we go. All right, so all right, I'm just going to go through these really quick. One comment, and I like that one very much. Thank you for that one. I would translate this as in providing players with the freedom to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. So somebody mentioned that he was able to attend quite a few sessions in the week during the week, which helped him reinforce principles during the weekend sessions as well. This one is very powerful. I'm sure that hits home with many, but being able to do, basically be able to play through COVID, which provided these children with a very necessary distraction from everything. Age group sessions. All right, I like that too. Somebody referred to the team culture. All right, talk about the organization and process. Okay, no roadblocks with scheduling. All right, so Mr. Party, you can take that one. And somebody mentioned great communication with their official trainer or professional coach, I should say. All right, so that's very good and meaningful feedback on this. Thank you for that. Now, obviously, other side of the spectrum, I am curious to hear from your perspective what may not have worked well. All right, so we always seek, I mean, I personally seek to do to be better at what I do, to better serve the association, better serve our members. Anything you think, from a constructive feedback perspective, you feel we could potentially change or look to change in the future as well. So again, I'll give you about a minute. Very meaningful feedback so far, so keep that up, please. That's very good. Thank you. All right, so is there anything you feel that we should, consider changing? And in the meantime, I'll keep adding people to the meeting as well. So again, I'll give you a little bit of time to go through that. Okay. Okay. So far, 2 comments, which I very much appreciate, and I think they're along the same lines. So I'll make note of that, obviously. Thank you for that. And again, I don't want to cut anyone short if you're still looking to add anything to. Okay. All right. So I see some interesting feedback being provided. So definitely difference from fall to spring when we talk about these Saturday sessions, I think, and I appreciate that. Team management training. I might jump on a few of these later on to get some additional content, but I appreciate all this feedback as well. All right, so moving on, not to as downplay anything that's been shared so far, but also keep an eye on the time. Quickly want to share with you the WSA vision, and a little bit what I'll do. I'll also share with you, and I'll look it up really quick, our mission, vision, and values. If you aren't familiar with them yet, I hope you can make sure you get more familiar with it in the days ahead. So I'll share that with you via the chat, simply because it's important to understand what we seek to achieve as an organization. All right, stepping back, like what is our as an associate, what do we hope to achieve? In essence, right, all that we do, there's a reason behind it. And we seek to be the best community enriching youth sports club, and obviously we want to use the game of soccer to teach our players, but also all the adults involved to be valuable life lessons, which is obviously quite a grand vision of what you want to achieve. But we're going to need your help to achieve our vision, or to make that vision become a reality. So we're going to talk a little bit more. Somebody referred to team culture as in having a great team culture in the last year at U9. We're going to talk about that a bit more as we move forward as well. But before we do so, all right, thinking about the role of the coach, the responsibilities of the coach, so to speak. I'm going to share a little video with you guys. Bear with me. Do this really quick. I've used this one before. And I'm going to share it not via the computer. I'm just going to share it with you via the chat, so you can watch it on your own, if you don't mind. I'm just going to stop sharing really quickly. Watch it on your own. I'm very tech savvy. All right, because we're talking about the role of the coach, or the impact a coach could have. Please watch this video. It takes about 3 minutes. A lot of what we're going to talk about moving forward will be linked to what I'm sharing with the video that I'm sharing with you via the chat. So click on it. It's a YouTube video. Watch it. Potentially make some notes on it as well. What you find interesting about it. So I'll give you 3 minutes, because the video is about 3 minutes in length, and I just shared it with you via the chat, obviously. So just keep an eye on the time. I'll make sure to manage the time accordingly, but watch it. It is in many ways entertaining, but also shocking. At least that's my personal opinion.
Hey, Ruben, it's is something supposed to be happening or you're muted?
So yeah, I shared the video via the chat
Okay,
with everyone. So all you need to do is click on the video, as I
got
said
it.
before. So just click on the video. Give you another minute or two to watch it. You should be almost done watching this video. All right, so I'm going to change gears quickly. All right, as I say, for the sake of time, I have a tweet that I came across not too long ago up on the screen right now. Please read through that and read through, what is shared here and compare it basically with the video that I just shared with you and had you watch. It's all focused on the role of the coach. I don't care if you're volunteer, professional coach for that matter. But what comes to mind when you read this and watch that earlier video as well? Like, what comes to mind? That's all I'm asking for, nothing more. What comes to mind when you read this and just watch that video as well? And again, just use the chat if you don't mind. You don't speak up. You can just use the chat, a couple keywords. What stands out to you? And we're talking about the responsibilities of a coach. All right, so I'll give you a good about 30 seconds. All right, again, we'll talk about being mindful of time, making sure that we wrap it up in a reasonable amount of time. What comes to mind? This chat, this tweet, and then the video that I just had you watch. All right, so I got one comment so far. All right, the first comment is very helpful. All right. Encourage the team, don't berate them, be part of the team. Positive reinforcement is much more impactful than being negative towards the players. Helps them be on their team. There we go. Very good comments thus far. Again, let me know your thoughts. Right. I hope you watch both the video and this tweet. I'm going to move this out of the way. Right. What do you think? What are your thoughts when you watch the video and then read this tweet? All right, so audience participation is limited, I can tell. Obviously, as I'm doing my best to make it engaging. I'm sure people have a lot of other things going on as well. I am going to move on. Thank you for those that did step up and provide some feedback. Very valuable. As I said, I want to talk about the responsibilities of the coach. Okay, so the first thing, and it links directly to what we just did, basically. Watching a video of a coach who seems to I have a hard time putting things in perspective, understanding how she can potentially impact the youth that she's working with, and another coach at the professional level, understanding that to start out, you actually have to build a connection with everyone that you're working with, and that's at the professional level. The players will remember how you feel. So creating an effective culture, which is in the end also something that we want to create to make sure the environment is conducive to learning and having fun. I'm going to jump on that in a little bit. Several of the professional coaches on, which I, by the way, appreciate that they came online tonight as well. We had a long talk about this a couple of days ago, but a major responsibility. I'll talk briefly about the Saturday practice sessions. which definitely falls within the responsibilities of the volunteer coaches. I'm going to talk about game day coaching briefly, highlight a couple of things, reminisce on what you may have done in the past, talk about team management or managing the performance environment, making sure that you include the parents in the experience, which is really, really important, which is also part of creating an effective culture. You need the parents to buy into what you're doing, and the importance of communicating well, collaborating with the professional coach. Earlier on, somebody made a comment about how well they were able to communicate with the assigned professional coach, which shows that, this is obviously a two-way street, but why it's so important to do that well. So these are the key things we're going to talk about tonight, moving forward, to make sure that you have a better understanding of what's expected of you as a coach. So we just had this one. So we talk about creating an effective culture. Now, recently I came across this, really what is the definition of culture? And in essence, the definition comes from, a Latin word, and it means care. So defining defining your role as a coach, understanding that obviously a good knowledge of, or a base knowledge of the X's and O's is helpful, and could be really important depending on the standard of the team. If you don't care about those individuals that you're involved with, you're not going to be successful as a coach. All right, so I'm going to change gears again. All right, and again, I told you I was going to try to make it as interactive as I possibly could tonight. We're talking about how to create an effective culture. So bear with me. I'm just going to stop sharing this really quickly. And what I'm going to do, again, use the chat, but I'm going to share a link with you. And I honestly want to hear from you what you think is needed to create an effective culture, or better said, like, what are the key elements of an effective culture? So just give me a second. I just got to copy the link. All right. Again, I'm sharing this with you via the chat. I can see directly, what everyone is sharing with me, as well as with the group. All you got to do is click on this link. It will direct you to the page. Like, what key elements do you need to think about, or what do you need to focus on to create an effective culture? That's what we're looking to do. That's what we're talking about. And again, this is not about being right or wrong per se, but I really want you to think about this. So let's do this. I'll give you, again, the link is there. I'll give you a minute or so. Also keep an eye on the time, as I keep repeating. I want to make sure we use our time effectively. So I'll check out this page really quickly. I see several of you guys already starting with this, which is really good. Thank you for that. You don't have to include your name, but what are the key elements of an effective culture? And as the subtitle says, how can we impact the lives of our players, or the children in your care, I should say, in a positive way? All right. All right, I see some comments coming through. Thank you for taking time to do this. All right, I think it's really helpful, meaningful to go through this exercise. Wow, I see a lot of very good things coming through, by the way, so thank you for that. In a little bit, I'll just pick a few that I think are very, all of what I'm seeing right now is very, very helpful, very valuable. This is beautiful. Thank you. This is really good. So a couple that I'm just going to jump on, and there's a reason why. One comment mentioned was failure is going to happen, but how you react and support your teammates and learn from that failure leads to future success. Creating an environment in which you're allowed to make mistakes. Right? I don't know if I want to use the word failure per se, but I know what is mentioned. I feel like I understand what was mentioned, but creating an environment in which you're allowed to make mistakes is really important. And saying that obviously players are allowed to make mistakes, or saying that children are allowed to make mistakes is one, but being able to act on that statement is really, really important as well. Because it is really easy to lose sight of things and still respond in such a way that has a child question his or her ability, for that matter. What else? Trust. I like, mutual respect, trusting one another. Somebody mentions, let me see, let everyone know they belong. I love that one. And I'll talk about that in a little bit as well, but those are really key too. So to be honest, some of you also mentioned fun. I mean, if it ain't fun, why bother, right? But it's also really a really big part of why children play sports to begin with, and we have to make sure that it will always be fun. We want children to show up on the field with a smile on their face. We also want them to leave with a smile on their face. So this is really good. Thank you all for this. I mean, you're able to review all this on your own as well. So I'm going to share my screen again as part of the presentation. Thank you all for your input thus far. So all the professional coaches on this, we had a discussion on this a couple of days ago, but like if you go through the research on what makes one organization or one team more effective than another, there are several key things that come up consistently to show, again, why one organization with maybe the same amount of talent or maybe even less talent than another organization, but is more successful. And you look both at the process and the outcome, to be honest. So a couple of them are connection. And I think some of you in your comments on the Padlet that I shared with you guys refer to that already. A story that I shared with the professional coach a couple of days ago, which I found very powerful, was I took from a book that I read not too long ago. There's a huge tennis academy in Moscow in Russia, which has produced a huge amount of top female tennis players. I mean, I'm sure if you're into sports, you know of many female, like high-level female Russian tennis players, and they all tend to come from the same academy. And this academy has obviously now built a reputation. So a lot of girls, young women come there to be trained by one specific coach. And the story was like, the person that wrote about the story was about a young girl showing up, 5 years of age, stressed out of her mind, scared, anxious, because she was at a famous academy and she was about to meet the woman that has helped so many of these female tennis players be successful. The lady walked up to this girl, had a ball in her hands, and all she said I have a ball in my hands, and all I want you to do right now, I'm going to throw it at you, and I want you to catch it. And it was so simple, so basic, but she acknowledged the girl, she spoke to the girl, and let her know she was welcome, which I found really interesting because you don't think about it. But an example like this shows how important it is to welcome each and every player when they show up for a practice, to welcome each and every child when they get out on the field for a game. All right, letting them know that you're there for them, connect with them, and show they belong. I mean, more than ever right now, we all want to feel we're part of something greater. That's what we want to create, right? For us to be effective, both as a club, but also at the team level, we want our players to be a part of what we do. If someone doesn't feel they belong, they're going to be afraid. If someone feels that they don't belong, they're more likely to walk away from something they want to be part of. It is within our nature, right? We're, as we went through evolution, we as people needed our group. All right, we want to be part of a group. We want to have a meaningful relation with people around us and feel like that we're part of the group. Somebody mentioned, and I just read it out loud, about failure and accepting it in such a way that children continue to learn and continue to make mistakes. All right, psychological safety, and I'm sure a lot of you work in the corporate world in one form or another. This comes back in many HR discussions as well, I'm sure, but this is so important, right? For us to have our children come back and understand that they're allowed to make mistakes consistently. They need to know that that they're allowed to make mistakes, that they're allowed to try things and don't have to be perfect, right? Too many children nowadays grow up with a fixed mindset because the focus is always on the outcome. The focus is always on the result instead of the process, right? And that hinders a lot of children in their development. And obviously respect, that somebody talked about care, trust, being respected. But these four are key to developing an effective culture. Why is it so important? We want our players to grow up in an environment, learn to play the game in an effective environment where they're allowed to have fun, where they're allowed to make mistakes, and where they feel they're part of something greater. We as a coach have a really important role to fulfill to make sure that happens. That's how simple that is. You know, I can talk about things like this for hours, but again, mindful of your time, I am going to move on to some other things as well. But I do appreciate all your input thus far on this specific topic. I'm going to talk about the development philosophy really quickly, zoom out, zoom in, talk about the impact on our training and coaching methods. But again, that will become a little more interactive again, so bear with me. So zooming out, right? This is what we seek to do, you know, as we progress through the ranks, right? As players develop. Each year we look to build, add bricks to our foundation. You know, like we have a foundation that we look to build upon, like before we put the roof on. But this is what we look for, like long-term vision when it comes to our development philosophy. Give you, 10 seconds, just read through it really quickly. All right, so that is the bigger picture. But what are the core principles of our development philosophy? So as we zoom in, there's two really important things that are key to our development philosophy. First of all, I want to once again talk about child-centered versus coach-centered. I like to believe that everyone here now understands, realizes the difference between one and the other. One is an environment in which the needs of the children are central to all that we do, or a coach/adult-centered environment is all about the ego of the adults involved. All right. We want to make sure it's a child-centered environment. It's about the learner needs, right? All that we do is based upon the needs of the learner, not based on what we as adults feel is necessary. No, what the children need. And that leads to these core principles. All right. We always want to make sure that everything is done with the best interest of the children in mind. So again, talk about child-centered environment. And the key outcomes. So we want to make sure that the children are given a chance to develop a love for the sport. I mean, I know all these professional coaches that are on are still involved in the sport, and I'm talking about soccer because they love the sport. They were given a chance to enjoy this. They were given a chance to fall in love with the sport and now have a sport for life. Right? They may not be able to play anymore, but they're still very much engaged in the sport. And I'm sure that applies to many of our volunteers as well. They just love the sport. We want to give these kids a sport for life. Right? What do we need to do to make that happen? Right? And given the type of game that we're coaching, right? And some of you referred to that already earlier on when we talked about, what do you remember from last year? We want to develop independent, capable, and confident decision makers. Soccer is a game in which the players need to make the decisions. We're not even talking about problems, but decision making, which is instant, which happens unconsciously, right? We have to help them become better decision makers and also more capable, because once you make a decision, you also have to execute it. These are the two, I think, principles that are at the heart of our development philosophy. Everything we do is geared towards making that happen, or we seek to make that happen, I should say. Because obviously I'm not, this is the vision, the dream, so to speak. But we're not perfect. I ain't perfect. We're shooting for excellence, obviously, but we're open to for constructive feedback because we're continuously looking for ways to get better. All right, so use the chat. Especially if you have prior coaching experiences and you went through U9, knowing what we look to do and knowing how we wish to play the game. How does our development philosophy impact our training methods? What to you stands out about our training methods? Maybe what is different in the training methods utilized by the association or implemented by the association compared to maybe how you grew up when you learned to play the game? All right, so please use the chat. I'll give you 30 seconds. How does our development philosophy impact our training methods? There we go. I see a couple comments coming in. Appreciate that again. All right, that you're taking the time and you're willing to provide some additional feedback. Okay. How does our development philosophy impact our training methods? Chaos. Focus on possession and passing, movement. Wow. I think this is probably one of the most powerful comments thus far. I mean, I like all the feedback, but the coach is almost more of a facilitator and not necessarily someone lecturing, which is definitely changed from how sports in general are coached, but how soccer has been coached. I like that one. Possession, obviously. The focus is on playing or game-like, I would argue, rather than specific drills. Okay, so some really good feedback on this. I appreciate that. And again, it's on my end. I hope you understand why I'm doing this. It's one, to engage you a bit, but also it's a means to check for understanding. You know, do you remember what we did last year? Right, so a couple more. Build confidence. Mistakes are okay, as we talked about earlier as well. All right, so now I'll touch on the training methods in a little bit, but how does our development philosophy impact our coaching methods? Because there's a difference between running a training session and coaching a game. That's why I'm also making a clear distinction between one and the other going through this. So again, same thing. How does our development philosophy impact our coaching methods? How do we want to coach, or how do we want our teams to be coached in line with our development philosophy? I'll give you 30 seconds. If you have anything to add to what you already shared with us, please do so. And again, thank you for your participation. It makes it worthwhile for everyone as well. So again, about 30 seconds or so to do that. I guess nobody expected this question given the limited feedback thus far, but there we go. There we go. We ask questions. That is definitely key to what we're doing, right? That's why I'm asking questions, because I want you to think about it. We don't necessarily, or humans don't necessarily learn, or we actually don't learn. It's not necessary. We don't learn very effectively if we're told what to do. But if we're challenged to think about it, the chances are the information is going to sink in much more effectively. So very good point. I like that. Obviously, the focus is on teamwork, not just the result, but definitely outcome driven. Give room to players to make decisions. Absolutely. And another very powerful one as well is like, do not coach play by play. Right? There's a big difference between coaching and controlling. If you're constantly shouting on top of your top of your lungs, telling players what to do, that is different from what we're expecting to see happen. Right? Because if you're telling players what to do, you're telling them what decisions to make, and they're not allowed to make their own decisions. Right? There's a big difference between one and the other. Coaching is guiding players, providing feedback every so often, but not shouting at them, telling them what to do all the time. So again, very good and powerful feedback. Thank you for that. Now I'll share quickly with you, right, the impact on the training methods. So we tend to make our activities as game-like as possible. So we talk about exercise activities. We don't necessarily do drills. Drills are done in the Army, or you go to Home Depot for a drill. The objective is to allow players to make as many decisions as possible. It's obviously about touches, but not just touches alone. We also want to give players the opportunity to make decisions, because what they do in the game is based on what happens around them. So we try to make sure, right, we combine the two, decision making and execution, right? Encourage creativity. If there's one thing that we're lacking in the US in general, I think is creative players, although it seems to be getting better, but a lot of them have to go abroad to get schooled in, unfortunately. Let players own the experience. And we definitely, and I think this is a myth that definitely needs to be addressed. We have some very capable coaches, several of them on this call as well. And I appreciate again that they're taking the time out of their schedule to come out online as well. But we definitely focus on the ability of our players on the ball, but it is in the context of the game. That they don't do a lot unopposed technical training doesn't mean we don't focus on the execution, but we're focusing on the skill of it, so to speak, rather than just technique, because technique is done unopposed. Skill is done in the action, in a game-like environment. Even in a one-on-one scenario, a decision is to be made, and we can help them become more capable in that scenario. All right, so don't confuse these things. That we're not doing unopposed technical training or limit the amount of unopposed technical training doesn't mean we don't focus on technique or execution for that matter. Right? And we have to be very economical with the time that we have. Because 3 hours to 4.5 hours a week sounds like a lot, but it isn't. Right. So we want to make sure we take full advantage of the time that we're given. All right. And as some of you already mentioned in the chat, and thank you for that, we're process driven. We like to win. I'm a competitor. I want to win, but it's not what drives me. Right? As we work with children, it's important to highlight the process. All right. So I've shared these slides with you. So moving on, also talking about the coaching methods, because there's a difference between one and the other. Soccer is and will always be a player's game, meaning we want to make sure that players are given the opportunity to make decisions. Somebody referred to that earlier on when I asked questions about the impact on our coaching methods. We're not telling players what to do play by play. We're allowing them to take control over. Right? If you have ever heard of the self-determination theory, which is really the theory behind what drives people, intrinsic motivation, right? One of it is belonging, one of it is competence, but also autonomy. Too often coaches take the autonomy away from players, as in we tell them what to do rather than allowing them to make decisions, right? Just let that sink in. We allow them to make decisions, right? Yeah, we referenced this multiple times already throughout, but failure doesn't exist. This is one that I use consistently when I train and coach as well. I want a place to understand that allowed to make mistakes, right? Because without mistakes, they're not going to get better. Anyone expecting players to be perfect probably isn't a good fit to be a coach to begin with. All right, that's the way children learn. All right, and my son recently learned how to ride his bike, but he did that first with training wheels. Then we took the training wheels away, but he still fell down a couple of times, and I even had to remind him that that's going to happen. I'm not now going to put the training wheels back, but you're allowed to make mistakes. But obviously, he hurt his knee and his elbow and was complaining about that. But that's how children learn. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to fall down. All right. Somebody just earlier also mentioned how to engage the players through questioning rather than just telling them what to do. You can do that in your pregame, in your halftime, and in your end of game talks. Right? How do we learn? Right? It should be a dialogue, right? With simple questions, triggering thoughts on their end. A good example. Let me think about this. So if you're talking about recognizing when to go forwards and when to potentially go backwards, right? So one of my midfielders on the outside, so my right mid gets the ball. He or she receives it, all right, and then has to make a decision. Question to ask at halftime could be, hey, we talked about it going into the game. When do you decide to go forwards, and in what scenario would you potentially look to go backwards, and why? To which a player could say, hey, you know what, if I have space, I can take the space. But if there's players in front of me, maybe I should play a ball out of pressure. But instead of me telling them, I can ask questions so they can come up with the answer, and it's going to become more effective. And over time, they're going to the chances are that the chances are it's going to be more effective and that the message sinks in. And that's what we want to be. We want to be more effective as coaches, right? And again, highlight the process. So I've shared these slides with you. That's why, like I said, so you have this on file as well, so you can go through it again on your when you have a chance. But this is what it all comes back to. All right. All right. So learning objectives for U10. I'm going to go through them quickly. I also just looked at my watch to make sure that I'm not taking too much time out of U9. They're not much different from what we focus on at U9. And what I do also want to stress is we narrow it down greatly. Our focus is on only a few. I wouldn't say they're quite broad, but they don't necessarily tell you exactly what we focus on technically or focus on in the decision-making process, but it's all connected. And I'll explain it as I show you those. So obviously it's important to focus on age-appropriate content. What we address should fit the players, just like a shoe should fit the children well. It shouldn't be too big, it shouldn't be too small. For success, it needs to suit the learner. Again, learner-centered environment. I just mentioned this, but less is more. Too often, and I noticed that we're talking about too many different things, and we wonder why our players aren't picking up these things, or our children, the children in our care, I should say, aren't picking up on the things that we're sharing with them. Right? If you're told too many things at once, all right, without given a chance to really have things sink in, right, you're not going to remember it. That's how simple it is. That's how the human brain works. That's how we learn, right? But if you provide them a chance to focus on a couple of things consistently, it will accelerate the learning. Right. So one thing that we're going to continue to focus on is utilize the concept of width. Right, going from one end to the other end line to end line is something the players want to figure out quickly. But understanding that, again, I forgot to add an I here, I think. But again, English is still not my first language. But we got to utilize the space, all right? Sometimes you can go forward, sometimes you have to go backwards, sometimes you got to go left, sometimes you got to go right. All right, but if you don't spread out, all right, we're going to narrow the space and becomes harder to play a possession-based game, basically. As we create space, we may be able to create openings as we open up the opponent. So now we can find ways to support the player on the ball. All right, so that will be another focus still. All right. We also want to make sure that the players on the ball are given an opportunity to make the decisions and execute these decisions accordingly. But the first three that I just shared with you, the concept of width, as in creating space, creating these openings, are all linked to the decision-making process. Often people focus on the decisions. I need to tell a player on the ball that he or she has done something wrong, but they fail to recognize that the space wasn't there, the opening wasn't created, and therefore the player on the ball couldn't make a good decision to begin with. So think about that. Always think about what is the cause and the effect, right? We're going to focus a little bit more on small group defending now. Most of the defending that we focused on was at an individual level. Now we're going to add at least one other player. So it becomes me and my partner. How do you defend effectively with two players? All right. And we continue to talk about the role of the goal player. All right. Players are still rotating through all positions, not in one game. Got to highlight that. All right. Players should be given the opportunity to play all positions throughout the season, but not more than 2, max 3 per game. But all players should also play in goal. That way they get comfortable playing the position. They learn to respect the position. And that way we're also we start to develop goal players rather than shot blockers. All right. Our players that are in the goal that may be able to save a shot every so often are almost incapable of playing with their feet. All right. We don't want to force anyone in a position too soon, too early. All right, any questions about these learning objectives? Because I know the last couple of minutes haven't been too interactive, and I apologize for that. But I'm also trying to get through a couple of things at a reasonable time, to be able to finish at a reasonable time. Any questions? I'll give you 10 seconds or 20 seconds. If you have any questions, use the chat. If not, I'll move on to the last few slides of this presentation. All right, so quickly highlighting the role of the coach when it comes to the Saturday practice sessions. So U9 and U10, the setup is the same. All right, when it comes to the Saturday sessions, all teams train at the same time. Definitely in the fall. The spring is a little more challenging, unfortunately, but in the fall, all teams train at the same time. All right, unless they may have a Saturday game, which could happen. But all right, there's a lesson plan provided. So we have age group leads. Right, so for the U10 boys, that's Mike Jeffrey, who's on our call as well. He'll provide lesson plans for every weekly session, which should be done by Wednesday, Thursday, latest. That way you have enough time to go through it, right? And if you have any questions, you can ask Mike questions when it comes to the U10 boys. U10 girls are overseen and helped by Matt Blankley. Same thing. Lesson plans to be sent out Wednesday, Thursday. Gives the parent coach a chance to go through. You can ask questions. That way you go into the sessions prepared. But the parent coaches lead the Saturday sessions. This lead coach will be there though. All right. And if Matt or Mike is unable to go, we'll make sure someone else is able to go. That way there's support, right, for you guys while you're out on the field. All right, because this is definitely something you learn through experience. All right, the more you coach, the more effective you become, the more effective you will become. But if you have someone there to help you, we hope to also accelerate your growth. We talked about accelerating the growth of the players. We also want to accelerate your growth. All right, and less is more still the case. The focus is still on key development objectives. All right, so it's in line with what we do during the week, in line with these age group objectives that I shared with you as well. All right, game day coaching, quickly talk about this as well. It's really important, and I want to stress this now. I want to make sure people will have this sink in as well. One voice, not 2, not 3. Right, that leads to chaos, and I like chaos in my practice sessions, but too many voices shouting instructions from the sideline will always make it will always make it harder for the players to comprehend what's going on. All right, it may make you feel better in the moment, right, but in the long run you're going to be less effective. All right, one voice, and if the professional coach is there, use him or her. We have some I'm very proud to have these capable coaches work for the association. Allow them to be of help. Allow them to be impactful, right, when they're there, right? All players should play at least 50% of the game. Now at U9, U10, and even beyond that in my mind, right, no one gets better without playing. No one wants to sit on the bench, right? So there's no reason for us to divide playing time evenly or close to evenly, right? And there's ways to manage that accordingly. But at least 50% of the game, right? And I would recommend you talk to the professional coach to include some good pre-game rituals. When I talk about pre-game rituals, I talk about an effective warm-up, right? At U9, U10, we'll talk about U10 right now. That mainly means just getting them ready, getting them engaged in the activity, which should all be done with ball, maybe individually first, do like some small sided games before you go into the actual game. It doesn't need to take more than 20 minutes. Whoever's going to be the goalie could be taken apart, but talk to your professional coach to come up with some pre-game rituals to prepare the players accordingly and effectively for the games. All right. And hopefully what I just shared with you on our development philosophy and the impact on our coaching methods has also sunken in with you, because the way we coach will impact how effective the players will take in the information we share with them. And again, whether or not we can help them become better players. All right. So we're almost done. All right. So this is a system of play we use across teams at U9 and U10. All right. So every system, all right, has its pros and cons. All right. We use the 1-2-3-1. Don't want to forget about the keeper, the number one in this scenario. Right. And the two defenders, one more central midfielder, a right winger, a left winger, and a center forward. We use this because I believe for that matter, this is the best system to use to help us meet our learning development objectives, as well as to help us meet that vision, that objective that we had set about playing a possession brand of soccer. Every system has its pros and cons. I'm fully aware of that. In the end, all right, there is no such thing as a perfect system. If you're looking for that, you're probably looking to win games consistently. All right, we're still looking to develop players and hope to win, and that would then be a positive byproduct of proper player development. Question for you, all right? And as I said, we're almost done. A question for you. What were the strengths of the system in your mind, and did you recognize any weaknesses within the system utilized at U9 and U10? All right, so I'll give you a minute to think about it and use the chat. All right, this system of play shown here. What are the strengths, and what were maybe the issues that you came across using the system with your team last year? All right, so 1 minute. I'm going to start my stopwatch right now. All right, to make sure that I keep track of the time. All right, what were the strengths in your mind? What worked really well, and what were the weaknesses of the system? All right, you should all have used the system. So what worked well for you? What didn't work well for you? Right. Okay. So 2 valuable comments, Paul. Thank you for that. So building out from the goalie was a strength. So the defense getting beat down the middle was a weakness. Okay, I can see that potentially. But when you say down the middle, do you talk about just the back line or also down the middle, like the central areas of the field? Maybe if you can confirm that for me. Okay. All right, so another comment on this, I thought it was a great system and allowed the kids to protect the goal. Okay, spread out on the width, which is something that we continue to focus on, and getting a feeling for future spacing. Yeah. All right, so obviously we got to make sure that, and that will become something, we will continue, we're going to focus on a little more as we move forward. You don't want to have to rely on 1 or 2 players that can play in the central areas more so than others, because they're just better or more athletic, I would say, because that's been brought up again over here. The that just means that we may struggle to stay connected to one another as we defend and maybe also even attack, which then that may need a greater focus. But thank you for that. We can squeeze when off the ball, so make the field a little smaller, and expand when we have the ball, which is all in line with the development objectives shared earlier. Okay. All right, so Paul, thank you for the follow, by the way. So Paul earlier mentioned something about getting beat down the middle. One of the development objectives I shared with you earlier, when it comes to the two in the back, is that we're going to talk more about how to defend in a smaller group. So for example, my right center back, the number 4, right? If he or she goes, what does my number 5 have to do? Right? He or she needs to know that she needs to come over, squeeze over a little bit to protect the number 4 in case she gets beat. All right. So very good point. And hopefully we can, as we continue to help our players get better at what they do, help some of these challenges that you experienced also become less obvious, so to speak, as we go through the season. I thank you for that question, but I think it's a question, by the way, Nuno. I mean, you're definitely going to come across, so Nuno brought up that some kids seem to have a tendencies preferring to play certain positions or don't like to play other positions. But what is really key, and it's a very fair, just question, I have to say, we want to make sure that players learn to play the game based on these principles that I shared with you earlier, rather than just learn to play the game based on a position. Because I've come across this over years where I work with certain players that have always played a set position, and they have learned to play the game based on the position. But if you then ask them to move around, they're not capable of playing a slightly different position because of the view of the field. Like some kids may want to play back because they have a different view of the field. Right? When you're in the middle of the field, you have to develop that 360 vision. Right? When you're on top, you may be watching the game or taking part in the game more so with the play happening underneath you. So your view of the game changes. And if you're not given an opportunity to do so, right, then over time you become really one-sided. That's this, the simple fact of the matter. Eventually, as we move through the program, right, U11, U12, kids move more so to certain positions, but you don't specialize till they're 13, 14, hopefully, because again, you don't want players to develop based on a position. You want them to develop based on the principles of the game. All right. All right. So quickly highlighting the two systems as we move up and down in offense and defense. So the defense, the more attack-minded shape on the left, and as we defend, how do we make the field smaller on the right? I've also shared that with you guys via the slides. I want to touch on something really important as we move into our season one more time. Mr. Porter, are you awake still? Are you still on the call as well?
Yes, I'm on the call.
Can you help me out one more time with the build-out line, given that you are a licensed referee and people may well have you as a referee at some point this season as well? Just touch on the most important things if possible.
Sure thing. So yes, the build-out line serves a dual purpose. Number one, when determining when the play is offside. So as we all know by now, in the 7v7 game, the offside is not determined by the center line, it's determined by the build-out line. So players between the center line and the build-out line are not considered offside. They can roam around there. Once they go past the build-out line, they must have two defenders between them and the goal when they receive a pass. So if they're behind the second to last defender and then the pass is played to them, that would determine that they are offside. So the second use of the build-out line would be when we're taking goal kicks or when the goalie picks up the ball. So when either of those occur, the attacking team must then retreat behind the build-out line. Whether you play in EDP, which or mid New Jersey, there's two different ways of when the attacking team can then basically attack the ball. In EDP, what they do is when when the goalie gets the ball, the attacking team retreats behind the build out line. The goalie can then play to one of its teammates. Once the teammate receives the ball, the attacking team can then cross the build out line and attack the ball. When there is a goal kick or a free kick, forgot about free kick, it's the same thing. The attacking team has to retreat behind the build out line. Then the defending team can then play the ball. Once it's touched by a teammate, then the attacking team can move in. In mid-New Jersey, the attacking team can move in either on a goal kick when the goalie has the ball, or on a free kick, the attacking team can move in once the ball is played. Either that leaves the goalie's hand, is kicked on a free kick, or a goal kick. And that's pretty much it.
All right. Thank you, Rich, by the way. Anyone, any questions about the use of the build-up line? I did see somebody mention something about explaining to the parents in general about the offside rule, which may not necessarily be a bad thought, by the way, Matt. Thank you for that. Anyone, any questions about the build-up line while we have a referee on?
Yes, Ruben, it's Nuno. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
So for Rich, we in mid-New Jersey last year, we were in a seesaw. It depended on who the referee was. In some cases, they honored the first touch, and in some cases, it was the minute the ball was put in play as it was rolling to that player, which we always try to figure out at the beginning of the game so that the kids could have expectations. You just went over the rule, but I kind of see it being interpreted by each referee accordingly. And I would say we should always just ask the referee right up front what their intentions are and not presuppose, because it could easily, hurt ourselves or the other team pretty quickly.
Yes, correct. What you should do, standard practice, when you show up to the field, talk to the referee with the other coach, ask them, how are we playing the build-out line? The referee should know the rules of the competition, which is competition is either EDP or mid-New Jersey. They should know the rules, but some of them will choose to leave it up to the coaches how they want to be played. I want to go from there to question. Said consistently referees have said that as long as the attacking team is making the effort to get back behind the build-out line, and is okay if they are goal side of the build-out line, or are they just being generous? No, the rule says that the defending team, the team with the ball, doesn't have to wait for the attacking team to get behind the build-out line, but to play the ball. But if they play it, they can't get a free kick because the team is not behind the build-out line, because they are making an effort. As long as they are making an effort to get behind the build-out line, if the ball is played before they get to that point, then play starts, whether it's when the ball is played in mid-New Jersey or whether the ball is received in EDP. So as long as the attacking team is making an effort, they don't necessarily have to be behind the build-out line if the ball is played early, because the goalie can wait for all the attacking players to get behind the build-out line, or the person taking the free kick. They have the right to do that.
Thank you for that, by the way, Rich. And Justin, I think your question was answered, but in essence, what is highly recommended just to talk to the referee before the game to confirm how he or she is going to implement the rule, because as much as there should be clarity on this, there's even a difference between the different leagues implementing this rule in a different way. So just check with the referee beforehand. Simple. So last slide for me. Does anyone have any questions about anything that we discussed tonight? Anything about the upcoming festival that we have scheduled for the 11th? I sent out the schedule, the updated schedule a couple of days ago. Any questions whatsoever that we can help you with while we're on? And if you don't want to use the chat, maybe you can unmute yourself. But while we're here, right? I have nothing else to discuss. I'm going to stop sharing. But while we're here right now, I want to give everyone a chance to ask questions if they do have them.